Corded trim adds a decorative touch to home decor projects. There are two types of corded trim. Trim with a flanged edge, which is for sewing on a machine, and corded trim without a flange, which has to be sewn by hand. To sew corded trim with a flange, first measure the project and add 6 inches to determine how much trim to purchase. Line the flanged edge with the raw edge of the fabric square, starting in the middle of one straight edge. Using a straight stitch and zipper foot, move the needle position so the needle falls close to the cord as the edge of the zipper foot goes along the trim. Begin sewing the trim about 2 inches from the trim end. To sew a corner, make snips in the flange. Start the snips about 1 inch from the corner and snip about 1 inch beyond the corner. This allows the trim to turn the corner smoothly. Stop sewing about 1 inch from the start of the trim. Cover over the trim edge, cross the trim ends, and trim away the flange portion of the trim where the ends overlap. Bend the ends of the trim toward the seam allowance and sew them in place. Because of the bulk of the flange was trimmed away, the finish is barely seen. Corded trim without a flange is hand sewn to the surface after the majority of the construction is done. Measure the project and add 4 inches to determine how much trim to purchase. Tape the ends of the trim to prevent raveling. Sew the seams of your project together, leaving a small opening in the middle of one straight side to tuck in the trim ends. Tuck the beginning 1 inch of the trim inside the opening, pinning in place if needed. Sew the trim over the seam using a blind hand stitch. When the end is reached, tuck the end into the opening and sew the opening closed by hand.